Alex and Nicole, and we're going to talk today about some old photos and how our photography evolved. We'll take some questions from audience if you guys have any. You can post on the Hangout in my stream. Otherwise, we'll get started. So Alex, let's start with you. Why don't you give us a little background information about who you are, in case anybody hasn't heard of you on Google Plus yet?
Hi, hello everyone. Alex Koloskov. My name is Alex Koloskov, and well, I'm a studio photographer, commercial studio photographer, currently based in Atlanta. We really want to move to California someday, but for now we've been for 10 years. Well, it's almost 11 years in Atlanta, and I moved from Ukraine originally with my wife, Daniela Larionova. We've been living in Ukraine, and when I got here, as a programmer actually, I was doing programming stuff, you know, Java, that kind of thing. But photography, well, not going to talk a lot, right, Jay? I just will kind of presentation, right? Okay, or you want the whole story? I don't know how long I'm going to talk now.
Well, you can. That should be good enough. Let me go to Nicole, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay.
So, Nicole, why don't you give us some background about what you do, and in case people want to.
Hey, okay, so my name is Nicole Young. I currently work as a stock photographer, and I also am an author with Peach Pit, so I write a lot of books on photography, and I also do ebooks on photography through Craft and Vision. So I think today I'm mostly going to be talking about my stock photos, and I've lived in several different places too, so I'm going to kind of bring that up in some of the things I'm talking about. But I've been doing photography professionally since 2006, 2007, and I've come a long way, I think, in the the 5 or so years, 6 years that I've been doing this. So I think it's going to be a really awesome discussion with the rest of these guys here.
All right, Jeffery Sullivan, it's nice to meet you face to face finally.
Jay, nice to meet you.
So tell me something about yourself to the viewers, and let's see if people know who you are and what you do.
You're breaking up a little bit, so hopefully we won't lose the connection here. I'm dialing in through a cell phone. That's about the best I can do from the Eastern Sierra here. But I'm an author and stock photographer as well as a workshop instructor, and that's what I'd like to talk about.
All right, so I am going to introduce myself in case people don't know me. I am Jay Patel. I do landscape photography. Like Jeffrey, I am also an instructor, and I work with Varina Patel, who's not here at this moment. But we publish a lot of ebooks, and we do workshops and give talks at different conferences and publish Photoshop techniques. And I've been doing this professionally since 2005, but my photography career started in 2001 and has evolved and taken several turns, and we find it interesting. So let's get started on the main topic. Alex, I will let you go ahead and tell me what did you start with, how did you end up shooting, and let's see, you have like 15 minutes or so. Explain what you did, how you evolved, and we'll have some questions after that. Alex, we can't hear you. Did we lose sound, Alex?
Do you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
I'm sorry. Well, yeah, it was muted, but I started pushing too much buttons. So thank you, Jay, for invitation. Well, photography was always fun for me. My first camera was my dad's camera. I mean, that Zenit. It was Soviet Union, pretty good actually, SLR camera. And I was shooting for fun. In fact, when we got here, well, we brought only like $400 with us to US, when we moved. And the first purchase, the biggest one, was Canon Elan 7E camera, which cost $700, and that's what we got first our US credit from Best Buy. So it was kind of.
What year was that?
I think it was 2002. We moved here to 2001, and probably in half a year we got first, like I said, credit. It was store credit on Best Buy, and we got our first camera. Well, I brought my camera from Ukraine, my old one, but I broke it fixing. When I was trying to fix it, I disassembled it, and it was no way I can assemble it back. So. Yeah, I was shooting, everything. It was film camera, of course, and I switched to slide, from just regular film to slide film very soon. And it was fun for several years. I didn't think about making money or anything that way. But, I was doing relatively good job, at some, maybe like portraiture, I was trying everything, obviously. Landscaping, portraiture, some stuff on my apartment bedroom, shooting some tabletop things, because I was kind of exploring everything. I didn't have any idea or any specific kind of way to know basically what is the best for me. And then people start asking me to shoot, their families. First it was friends. No money involved, but then at some point people start offering me money, and that's where fun actually started going to the end, because I was shooting, yeah, it was, I mean, when you shoot people, it's like, I'm not portrait photographer now, but at least I know something. You need to have a connection to the person you're shooting with, right? And it should be kind of, a lot of emotional stuff involved. But, when you're shooting for money and people just, like waiting, come on, shoot me, I give you money, I'm sitting here, so why want from me? That kind of stuff. So we kind of stopped doing it very, very soon. I didn't like it. And then the second thought about how to make money was stocks. I was thinking, well, I'm shooting a lot of landscaping. I was doing more and more stuff in studio, which was, like I said, bedroom with no lighting, with just some household lighting, basically.
You have any images to share with us?
Well, yeah, I can show you a few. It's, like I said, it's 2003 probably year shots, and I think they are made on film like this, for example. So this basically done in a bedroom and shot like this. Obviously, it's the best. I had many, films with total crap on it, and shot like this. It's actually first light painting. Light painting, when you have several exposures on one piece of film with different flashlights, it was actually different colors. And I've seen the result only after we develop a film next day. So it was a pretty cool challenge to get this, it's not digital. And, talking about landscaping, this kind of shoots, well, they look just nice, kind of. That time I was kind of excited, but now I see it has nothing to do with,
studio photography.
You can sell, yeah. At least if you talk about money, this kind of thing, it was full internet even that time. So it was no way to shoot it. Again, some kind of studio stuff or like this portrait. So basically, I like this portrait. It's very good portrait. And it was a little bit later. I think it was just digital camera. But, we tried stocks. We tried to submit all the kind of images from any areas. We have landscaping, portraiture, studio, whatever, to different stock agencies. And most of them refused except Alamy. Alamy?
Alamy.
Alamy, okay. So they kind of let us through, and we start putting images there. And that's probably where...
We lost you again.
Yeah, it was coming probably, well, maybe maximum $100 per month, but maybe even not. So it was very little, but it was some kind of money which, wow, I was receiving by doing what I really like. Because I wasn't shooting what I was asked, right? I was looking for subject and shooting the way I like, and then I hoped to get some money from it. And it was several years like this, without big improvements in terms of financial, but it was a lot of improvements at some areas, and that's when I start feeling what I like more. I understand that I like more to shoot in studio. You know, when nobody touches me, I have no lights, no people around. I can sit hours and hours and shoot one little subject till I get something interesting. Obviously, I got my first digital camera was Sony Cybershot, something with a big lens, Carl Zeiss lens, whatever. And the second one was Canon 10D. So it was kind of cool time to learn a lot of stuff. And then we decided to go commercial. We opened business and we start advertising, putting money on advertising on Google Ads, like local. We tried to send cards. It was a waste of money. But at some point, we started getting calls from local businesses. And mostly the first who called me, it was about architecture photography, actually. It was not studio, but architecture. Many, you know, like builders need to shoot, you know, buildings inside, outside, before, after, renovation, you know, that kind of stuff. And I was shooting for several years. I was making relatively good money on commercial photography, shooting exteriors and interiors. And actually, that's where I was first started to shoot the HDR, you know, when we kind of figure out there is technique called HDR, you can do, you know, that kind of thing. And actually, we got pretty good client only because we showed him HDR. The name was AIMCO, A-I-M-C-O. It's maybe I'm pronouncing it's not right, but there are major apartment builders in southeast area. And
so they wanted HDR for their architectural photography.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they invited us once to shoot the apartment, the big, you know, that kind of welcome center, or how you call it in apartments, which they renovated. And I showed him kind of what we did, why we did, you know, the different exposures. And then a few hours later, when we got home, I sent him the one assembled image, and the guy said, "Wow, that was cool." It was some interior, you know, with big windows, large windows, and it was everything visible there with blue sky. So they bought it. And I was shooting for them, receiving relatively good money. Like it was around 3,000 per day of shooting time with trail, with everything. So it was good that time. But again, after about a year, I start feeling that, you know, it's not fun again. Yeah, I have money, but it's not because, you know, apartments, they are all the same. You do it once, you do it second time, and then all the same thing. You go there, you shoot those rooms, you do outside, inside, pools, you know, nice shots. If you go to my stream, there is like interior, HDR interior and exterior albums. You'll see what I mean. They look nice, but if you do it like every week or so, it's not what kind of you really like. And it was hard decision, but we kind of stopped doing this. Moved more towards the studio stuff, and at the time, actually, I got pretty good clients here for studio photography. Not people, just the tabletop stuff I like. But again, after some time, I just found that, again, it's not much fun, because for me, fun stops when challenges is disappearing. You know, if I don't have challenging project, It's not fun. Yeah, it's easy to shoot. So when I shoot something which is easy, which I already did, it's not fun. It just work. It's repetitive work, and that's what I didn't like.
So you like to be creative with
Yes,
the
exactly.
product that you have, or have like a technical challenge to control the light, or
Exactly.
I
And
see.
the only way to do it, it's I mean, to shoot for yourself again. Because if I kind of creating the idea, well, the whole thing is mine. Well, not mine, with Jenny, with my wife, we always do it together. So we create an idea, and it's more challenging, it's better, and then we're trying to implement. It can be days or weeks for implementing it, and the result, it's really fun. The whole thing is fun, every step of it. But how to make money on it, that's another question. And that's how I came to educational stuff. I said, well, I can film everything. I can explain while doing it, on the camera. And then I can sell this stuff because it's really interesting. A lot of shots we did, for example, like a Godiva shot. You've seen that Godiva with, milk and chocolate. It was self-assignment. Many people didn't realize maybe it, but it wasn't shot for Godiva. It was for us. But I learned a ton doing this. And again, you can go and buy this. It's not a big money. And, knowing that what I sell can help people, it's a great feeling. And doing this, it's even more amazing feeling. So that's kind of where we are now. I like shoot for, well, again, I like, sometimes we do commercial stuff, but we now very picky. We picking, we agreeing to shoot where it's interesting for us. And having that passive income let us do it. We can refuse shooting stuff which we just don't like. For example, like shooting for catalogs. There is a huge market. When you get in like 300 pages catalog with 5 images on each, it's probably several months work, and paid very. It's good money, and you can kind of live having several catalogs per year. It's enough. You can have a lot of money, but it's very boring work. So we refuse stuff like this, and we do only interesting shots. We work for Walmart. We are shooting for IBM, for a little bit for Home Depot. Now, like for C4, working well. And nice, interesting companies. But again, only interesting shots are commercial. The rest is just our creative work.
So what kind of equipment do you use right now in terms of camera, lenses, lighting?
Well, I have 35mm, which is Canon, with all kind of lenses, macro, mostly for studio. 2 macro lens, one 7-200 for the stuff. For fun, I have this, fisheye and wide-angle lenses, which left from that time when we are shooting for architectural.
Mm-hmm.
So I do it kind of for fun, all these HDRs. HDRs is Google Plus love landscaping, right? If I post my, let's say, shot like Godiva or any splash, well, it gets like, 50 pluses. That's cool, man. I spend like a week doing it, and it's cool. When I go outside on Lake Lanier, shoot nice landscape, I post it there, and well, it can end up being in top because it's like thousands of pluses. Well, that's cool. That's true. It's cool, but So we do it, and we enjoy the feedback. We do the landscaping stuff, which is really cool, but mostly in studio. And talking about equipment, what else? I have last year I bought Hasselblad with phase 1 back, so I went medium format. Very interesting experience with everything, and I got that big view camera, Ambo Ultima. It's big bellows. If you guys are watching me, I was posting that sometimes on Google Plus. Digital back on one side, lens on another one, and you can screw it. You can do whatever you want with that system. It's mostly for studio stuff, obviously. Actually, Nicole, it's cool for food. Things like this where you can change focus and plane and play this. Yeah, but it's very long process of shooting because everything is in manual. There is shutter, you cock shutter, then you put focus, then you press, bam, you got shot, and then 1 minute, and then you got another shot.
So Nicole and Jeffrey, when you come back, feel free to ask the questions if you have questions. I'm not the only one to ask the questions, so just to let you guys know.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, that's it. I think I fit in 15 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's okay. So I think I wanted to go to Jeffrey since his connection is sort of unreliable from Eastern Sierra. Jeffrey, tell us something about how you and when you got started, how your skills have developed. You've taken different paths coming to a successful full-time photographer as you are.
Yeah, I actually started way back in 1974. For me, that was moving to California and going into 8th grade. It was in the Bay Area in Saratoga. And my junior high school actually offered a darkroom photography class. So I was able to get started in 35 millimeter photography. And I picked up an AE1, a Canon AE1 around that time, and practiced photography for, well, from then till now. Along the way, I picked up a Nikon 35 millimeter and never really got into 35 millimeter too much, mainly because you know, you need the darkroom for the post-processing, and I would take a picture of something and it wouldn't come out the way you wanted, of course, and I didn't really have the time and the funds to invest in a darkroom. But I did go, upon graduating from UC Berkeley with a computer science degree, my first job out of college was for Tektronix, and I went straight into digital imaging. I went working for their graphic printing and imaging division when they were kind of at the top of the market at that time with color printers, color monitors. I became a technical specialist for a large format scanner. And through that, and being in that division, I learned a lot about color maps and CCDs and RGB and all the different color spaces and how you translate from the real image to the CCD of the camera to the color space you're storing it in, and then back out the other side through a printer and in between on a monitor. And there are a lot of challenges associated with that, but of course, at that time, photography was still analog. So right around, say, 2001, I picked up my first digital camera, and it kind of merged the best of both worlds. I now was able to do photography on a computer, do some post-processing, as well as indulge in my interest in photography. And of course, digital cameras got better and better. 2004, I upgraded the point and shoot that I had in 2001. So for the first years of the 2000s, I was still carrying a 35 millimeter and using the point and shoot for more snapshot type material.
Do you have any
2004 and 5,
any old images to share with us? Not sure.
I'm sorry?
You have any images to share with us from that era?
I do. I don't know if I had. Do you want some from way back then?
Yeah, please. I mean, we would be really interested to see how your skills develop too, and I'm sure other people would be too.
Well, the challenge at that time was that my little point and shoot digital camera was 2 megapixels, so it was more the snapshot camera at that time. But it was still nice to have that ability to do a little bit of post-processing, although I think that camera didn't even shoot RAW, so it was still pretty primitive in terms of what it could do.
What was it, Nikon, Canon?
Actually, that first one was just a little Olympus, but it cost like $600. It was crazy.
Yeah. Mine was Nikon 990. It was like $750.
Yeah, and then I bought a Canon, what did they call it? The G5, PowerShot G5. And that had RAW mode. It had, you could bracket exposures. Even though it was kind of a, you know, it wasn't a DSLR, it was still technically, I guess, a point and shoot, but it had a lot of DSLR type functions. So that got me a lot further, and that just whetted my appetite for getting into DSLR photography, which I did in 2005. So I had a pretty solid foundation both in the digital processing and photography, and so when I took off from there, I hit the ground running. And let me see, let me bring up an old a really old folder here and see what the oldest images I can find might be. Have that for you in just a second. Okay, here's one, and looks like, see if I can find the date it was taken. I'm pretty sure I know what it is. I don't have the date on that. Let me see. I do a screen share.
Yeah, and then you'll have to tell it to actually share the screen.
Right. I think I'll go with this window.
There you go.
See if it does.
Oh yeah, you got it.
So that's obviously a picture of Half Dome. It was taken with a 2-megapixel digital camera. I believe it was in 2001,
Wow.
right when I got the camera.
It's a summer view, I think.
You know, it is. It's not a very common place to view it from. And let me skip forward to, I believe this was the following camera. Oh, wait. Guess I have to switch which windows it's sharing here. And this next one was with PowerShot G. It was a G5. So it was a 5-megapixel camera. This was during a forest fire, so I got a nice layered effect on the landscape in the background.
So at this point,
just along near.
At this point in time,
Sorry,
you've
go
been
ahead.
shooting for how long?
Well, I'd been shooting cameras in 35 millimeter for, geez, 30 years.
Wow. So you
But
know
I
the
hadn't
exposure
experienced-
basics and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it was just killing me that I couldn't do the post-processing. Then finally, cameras came out that were within my price range, where on my PC, I could do the post-processing, get raw files, so you actually have a color space to do it in. And so I just took off from there. So within the next year, I got a DSLR, started hitting the road, went to Arches that year, and of course the local parks around here, you know, Yosemite and so forth. And then actually in 2006, as fate would have it, I ended up getting divorced. So I had the freedom to pursue my dream, so to speak, and not have to ask permission. So actually packed up my stuff in September, hit the road, went on the road for 3 weeks to Utah, and came back about every 3 weeks to see my kids, and then I'd go back out on my next 3 or 4 week expedition. So I did that basically for the next probably three plus years.
Cool.
And after a while, I started realizing I'm spending all this money on gas. I'm spending 3 weeks out every 4 on the road. What do I need an apartment for? So one winter, I actually didn't even. I would start getting an apartment for the winter, but then at one point I said, hey, there are warm places to go, so I even ditched that. So I spent about 2.5 years where I was mostly on the road, doing a lot of camping. I visited, I know probably every Starbucks from New Mexico to Washington State. And I was taking a lot of photos, probably not spending enough time editing them or learning to edit them because power was always a challenge. But certainly learning a lot and having a lot of fun.
So did you find
So
that
these are
you had a challenge to move from shooting analog to shooting to digital?
No, if anything, I found it freeing because you didn't have things like reciprocity failure. You know, when you get too long on a film camera, you can't just do the exposure. Let's see, what else? You didn't have to worry too much about white balance because you could always fix that later. No, I found, if anything, it was a liberating experience. Although I do have to say, up until probably my Canon 5D Mark II, I felt that the color space, the 12-bit color space of DSLR cameras up until about 3 years ago was a little bit limiting, and I didn't feel that they really had the color response to really produce a realistic image without a fair amount of wrestling with the results. I'm not convinced, and this may be getting a little too technical, but I'm not convinced that a digital sensor really has the linear response to fit the camera model that we expect it to have. And you can actually verify that very, very simply by doing bracketed exposures and take 3 exposures one stop apart. So all you should have to do is change the exposure by 1 stop, and they should all look the same. Well, when you compare the 3, they never look the same. So that just goes to show that you can't assume that what you're dealing with a digital camera is simply a digital version of what we learned in the analog space.
Good point, actually.
And that's probably about as deep as I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but you learn your way around your camera, and you edit a little images and optimize the results you're getting for whatever your goals may be, whether it's realism or artistic or what have you. And once you learn your way around your camera, you can get things done. So it's not a barrier; it's just a learning curve.
So Nicole and Alex, you guys have any questions for Jeffrey?
Crickets.
Well, this stuff looks cool, and
Yeah.
I'm far from, kind of.
All right, then I will
Yeah, these
go ahead, Jeffrey, if you have any other things to share with us.
Yeah, these are actually still from about 2004-05. I do have a presentation I created recently to deliver in Yosemite. I can show you a couple of pictures from that.
Sure.
Just as a better judge of what I've been doing the last few years. So let me switch screens here briefly. I can get the screen share. There we go.
So where is this from?
So this is from Mono Lake, and actually I did a sequence of images from Mono Lake. This is from before sunrise, as the sunrise light is coming over the horizon, and then the next one is while you have the alpenglow just about to hit the mountains. Then you've still got the sun; it's just coming over the horizon. There's salt on the bushes there. The lake is 3 times saltier than the ocean. You have a polarized daytime shot. And then this is a stormy afternoon, and this is near sunset with a moonrise, day before the full moon date. And this is later that same evening, and this is after sunset. Another one after sunset with the belt of Venus, the shadow of the Earth visible underneath. And this is at night. This is actually a time lapse. Oh wait, are you seeing these?
There's a delay. Yeah,
I might have gone. I think I might have gone through them a little too quickly. Oh, and actually, this is a time lapse. I remember I tried this a couple days ago, and that didn't work so well either.
That's okay, but we get the idea. Your Mono Lake shots are excellent.
Thank you. Yeah, so basically, I was reading through some of your suggestions for what to talk about, and it said, for example, what would you do differently? And I think, for me, what is really energizing me right now is completing the book that I'm doing, the Landscape Photography Guidebook to California. And I have to say that if I had to summarize the first, say, 2 years of running around doing this, I did have a lot of fun. I got some good pictures. But it is hard to really do your best work in landscape photography if you're not truly an expert on the terrain and the area. And so I was kind of winging it and showing up and hoping I had some good luck. And there, of course, you do have a fair amount of that, but then the other times you may not know where to go to optimize your results. And I think it's going to also prove to be a benefit that I'm now living in the Eastern Sierra and also focusing on Southern California, or the southern half of California and the Eastern Sierra, so I can cut out a significant amount of travel expense. I just had someone ask me literally in the last 24 hours, hey, do you want to go to Utah for a few days? And it sounds like a lot of fun, but when you say, okay, 1,000 miles out, 1,000 miles back, when I add up all my car expenses, including depreciation, gas, repairs, and so forth, you're talking 70 cents a mile. So that's a $1,400 trip before you eat any food or stay in a campground or anything. And then you start to look at opportunity cost. Well, for $1,400 less, I could drive down the road, look into some new areas that I haven't quite dug into enough yet, and probably get results that are just as compelling and support kind of my core branding of being a local photographer in the Eastern Sierra, and at the end of the day, be a little bit more profitable and certainly a lot more rested by not driving to Utah.
So do you find that...
I guess that's kind of about the only thing I change.
So do you find that running a business sort of takes the fun out of photography?
Not yet, because really, like when I was in high tech, I did a lot of marketing and sales, and I really liked working with the people, and it didn't hurt to get outside and go golfing instead of sitting in an office every once in a while. Now I get to be outside all the time. Love the outdoors, love backpacking, fishing, camping, all of that. And the nice thing is, too, that I still get to work with people, especially when I run workshops, and lately I've run a lot of photo walks. I get to be with a lot of people who are also having a tremendous amount of fun, and how can you go too wrong with that?
Good point.
So I guess as long as, until I get to the point where I'm going to Yosemite for the 40th time and Mono Lake for the 50th time, so far at least, the people are different, the weather's different, the seasons are different, and it's still pretty new every time, so it's quite a bit of fun. So it hasn't gotten old yet.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all this with us. In case we lose you, I wanted to say thank you for joining us and telling us about what you are up to and showing us some of your images.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to meet you at least virtually by video, if not directly in person, but look forward to seeing you in the field sometime soon.
Yeah, next time I'm in Eastern Sierra, I'll stop by and say hi. I've only been there once.
That would be great.
But we need to explore that area more.
Yeah, it's definitely worth quite a bit of time. I actually, and you're right over the hill from Yosemite too, so you really can't go wrong.
Yeah, I've backpacked in Yosemite quite a bit, so I know that area very well.
Yeah, I'm actually going on a horseback trip in the next couple of days. We'll go in for 6 days.
Cool. Good luck. Well, I want to go to Nicole, who is waiting. So, Nicole, tell us how you got started and show us some of your early works. Good,
Sure.
bad, ugly.
Yeah, I have some of that. So I started photography, I became interested in photography in high school. I think a lot of people discover it, when they're young, and it's just a hobby. And I was always into art and crafts and painting and drawing and all those things. I was never really solidly good at anything. I just really enjoyed it. And I took a high school photography class. I needed an art credit, and I realized, this is actually something that I really, really enjoy. So I just continued, to do that and kind of build on that. Of course, in high school, I wasn't amazing. I was very new to it, but I caught on to the geeky side of it. I think that's why I enjoyed it, because my brain works both ways, very artistic and also very technically minded. I remember having that light bulb moment when I understood exposure, and I can't even think of what it's called, but understanding basically the relationship between an f-stop, your aperture, and your shutter speed. And then I was just like, I get it. Oh my gosh, and I remember being like 17, like in class, going, oh, I understand how this works. And that was kind of the moment that I realized this is awesome. This is what I want to do. But I always thought it was way too difficult. I was filmed still when I was in high school. It was like, maybe 15 years ago or so for me. So was it that long ago? I'm in my early 30s, so it wasn't, like an incredibly long time ago. But still film, digital was very, very, very new and extremely expensive, and only for people who had like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Because even the internet was still not kicking it, like the way it is right now. So I was like, I really wanted to be, I think I wanted to do sports photography. That really appealed to me, catching the action, the moments. But I told myself, it'll never happen. It's way too competitive. So I just kind of pushed that, in the back of my head, and I'll just do it as a hobby. And then I decided, a year out of high school, I decided to join the military. So I joined the Navy, and I had the possibility of, sorry, Jeffrey, I'm going to mute you if you don't mind. I think I have some feedback coming from your thing, so sorry about that.
Sure.
Just unmute yourself if you have a question. So I joined the military, and I had the possibility of, being a lot of different things you have to test and stuff. So I wanted to be a linguist. I'm sure I could have become a photographer because I was still very much into photography. But I told myself if photography is my job, then I won't enjoy it. And maybe that may have been true in the military. There are several different types of military photographers. So I could have ended up being the person who was photographing everyone's portrait, or something really boring like that. So I was like, what, I'm going to do something else that I'm really good at. I'm going to be a linguist, and then I went with that. And so in 2005, I think I bought my first digital SLR camera. I had a Nikon F4 for the longest time, not super geeking out on gear, just like maybe a few simple lenses. And I decided to get my very first DSLR. And with that, and this is like 2005, with that purchase, I realized I had so much stuff I had to learn about raw images. What the heck is a raw image? What is an NEF file that pops up? I probably shot everything in JPEG when I first started because I was like, I don't even know what to do. And the community of photographers was not heavy online like it is now, especially at that point for me. Yeah, so I don't even know how I learned how to do a lot of things. It was probably just either trial and error. I think I even deleted a lot of my raw files in like my first year because I didn't even know that they were something I should keep. And I understood negatives, like film negatives, but not, the digital side of things. So I was learning all of this stuff, and then I was like, I really want to be a better photographer. And so I looked into taking local classes. Granted, I'm still in the military at the time, so I was looking into taking evening classes or something. And everything I could find was too basic for me. It would have. I never went to any of these classes, but it would have. What I understood by reading, the description would have been like the basics of I don't know. Here, take a picture and focus here, and it probably would have been way too simple for me because I was proficient at that basic amateur level of I understood, how things worked. So I was reading a popular photography magazine, and I learned about microstock photography, and I was like, this is kind of cool. Maybe I'll get in on this and just with no expectations of making money. Of course, there's, make a little bit. I didn't really expect to make what I make now, which is basically supporting my, my life. It's my main source of income. But I just joined it because I was like, it'll give me kind of a focus for my images. It'll give me something to shoot for, literally. And then, all the photos have to be inspected. So I started doing
What year was that?
That was in 2006. That was like mid to late 2006. I think in August is when I really kind of started.
The microstocks were just coming on.
Yeah, the microstocks were just like, I wish I'd known about it earlier because they've been out for a while. But I think I got in early enough to where I was still kind of a new photographer. I had a long way to go. But I took a lot of photos that I'd already shot, and I uploaded them. And I mean, you could go to my stock portfolio, go all the way back to the end, and see all of my photos are still there. It's not really, I wouldn't consider my stock portfolio like I'm trying to get a job, here's my portfolio. It's a completely different type of portfolio. So the good, bad, and ugly, it's all in that portfolio if anyone's interested in seeing my crap stuff from the beginning. But I grew in 2007. I actually started specifically photographing things for my stock portfolio. And I'm actually going to jump over to kind of talk about how a lot of what I'm going to share here is really specifically for stocks. I'm going to go ahead and screen share and just kind of talk about this stuff. Okay. So these, I have all of, if you're curious, all of the dates and everything are up the top left here, along with all, some of the other information. This is, some of my early stuff from 2007. I mostly would find I love photographing people, so that's kind of what I was doing. So these are like maybe people that I met through Model Mayhem or through other photographers, and all I was doing was really just portraits. I was not, mistakes with my stock stuff. Now, some of these photos sell. They do well if people are looking for that kind of work, but, it's, I think I kind of slowly started to realize I
come up with a concept. Sorry to.
Yeah, no, it comes from. Sometimes they just come. It's just random. So I have a whole list of ideas. I'll think of something, sometimes I'll see a photo that inspires me, or I'll experience something that inspires me. You know, like I just got my nails done the other day, so maybe, oh, it'd be really awesome if I could do a nail salon photo shoot. You know, something along those lines. And I write all of these things down, and a lot of it for me is just having access to locations. Like if I know someone who works at a nail salon and they're willing for me to come in and use their place to take photos, for example. You know, that's kind of how I work, because all of the stuff that I photograph is on spec, which means I don't get paid to shoot it. I photograph it, and then I hope people license the images to basically make my money back on that shoot. So I have, you know, I work on kind of a shoestring budget for a lot of things, you know, but because it's all about more sales with, you know, smaller amount on royalties to eventually build up to become a larger paycheck in the long run. But like, you know, and I really love to photograph kids, and this is just, I had like a daycare idea that I wanted to do. So I have a friend who has had these adorable kids, and they were perfect in front of the camera, and so I used them for a couple different shoots, and this is one of them. So it's all about like kind of just knowing people and finding the right things that fit. And you know, I do want to pay everyone that works with me, so I always make sure that that's part of it. But it's coming up with those solid ideas that actually are stock photography. You know, I've really separated my photography, especially lately. I have my work photography, and then I have my fun photography. And my fun photography is like my landscape stuff, because I enjoy doing it, but most of it doesn't go into my stock portfolio, not because it wouldn't sell as stock, but because I kind of want to have it for myself, I guess. Okay, so that's kind of the whole conceptual thing, you know, that I was working on. This is another earlier photograph, and obviously I was going for some kind of like college theme, but this is more, I guess, a technical side of it. I found, and when I was scanning through a lot of my older photographs, I realized I didn't have any really, really long lenses, and I realized I photographed everything so wide. like this is photographed at 18 millimeters. It may have been on a crop sensor. I'm not exactly sure what my camera was with this. Probably a Nikon D200, I'm guessing. I used to photograph Nikon. I've kind of switched back and forth a couple times, but now I'm all in Canon. Just a little background information there. But so this is photographed really wide. And looking at this, you know, and kind of one of the things that Jay, that you asked us to do, is say, well, how would we maybe improve this photograph?
Correct.
I have a completely different style. I really don't shoot wide hardly at all, unless it's like a landscape or something like that. But with people, you usually don't want to shoot very wide because you can distort them and things like that.
Right.
So how I would fix this is I would put on a longer lens, and I would step really far back. And this is a very similar setup shot in that style, where I use probably, I'm at almost at 200 millimeters. And I may have been using a Canon 7D with this, if I remember when I photographed this. Not exactly sure. Yeah, that was probably my Canon 7D. And so I was even, you know, kind of cropped in even further because of that crop factor. But I lose the background, which is what I wanted, to blur it out and really focus on the person. So huge difference between the, you know, this photograph probably would do a lot better if I'd photographed it like this. You know, so these are like the things that I've kind of learned just with my style, learning lens compression and all those geeky, techie things that you don't quite, you know, there's so much. So many things about photography, and it's like trying to fit them all on these, you know, balancing beams and trying to make sure that they all balance. And, you know, I think it's a struggle that we all, even professionals, we still go through that. You know, like we kind of have to be reminded of little things, and then we're like, oh, yeah, I got to start doing that with my photos, you know. So now, and like I said, I'm really just recently starting to fall in love with landscape photography, which really makes me angry that I didn't do it years ago when I lived in Hawaii, because this is a horrible photograph. I mean, the scene is beautiful, but as far as photography goes, it's really boring. You know, it's an old photograph. I photographed it like, you know, like.
Hey, it's much better than the one I'm going to show you.
But this is, you know, because I was not a landscape photographer. I'm slowly considering myself, because I do know photography so much better. I'm learning that side of things because I enjoy it. I want to create beautiful photos, but I lived in beautiful places, and I did not take advantage of that. So another place I lived was California, and, you know, I think this is just me driving around and just stopping and doing some handheld photography. So, you know, I mean, I may be able to punch this up, and like, I think it looks out of focus in the background there, you know, so I don't even know what my settings were on this. but it's, you know, I would photograph this so much better now if I had the opportunity, you know. So I'd be I'm much more slow with my images, especially landscape. I'm very, very meticulous with setting things up and trying to get it as right in camera as I possibly can. But so, and here's an example of this is actually some of my newer, better stuff. You know, I'm realizing I live in awesome places, and it doesn't matter where you live. Everyone lives in awesome places because there's always something beautiful about that place. So you have to find it and photograph it. I lived in, like I said, Hawaii. I lived in Japan, Hawaii for 3 years, Japan for 3 years. I lived in Monterey for several, like two years. Kind of split that because I was there earlier in my Navy career as well, and I did not take advantage of that. So now I'm really trying to, do what I can to photograph. This is in Tulip Festival, about an hour north of Seattle. So I drove up there for a couple of days, and there were a bunch of daffodils, no tulips, but I got some interesting skies, so I was happy with that. Another photograph of Seattle. I'm just trying to get those cliche shots because I may never really have the chance.
There's nothing like cliche shots. I mean, it's just a terminology, trust me.
So, and then here's some kind of more landscape stuff. Like this is a very early photo, really not very good. I'm sure that all of these whites over here are completely blown out. That's the stuff that I know now, and there's like speckled light, and it's just, it's a mess. And and so here's a kind of the opposite of that. This was recently, actually, this was with when you were out in Oregon, and we went up to Panther Creek.
Yep, I recognize the place.
Yeah, and so this is actually one of my more recent favorite photographs that I've created, and I'm very happy that I know how to do this stuff now, because I think that it's great to be able to frame these things and put them on your wall. A lot of the photographs I create are people and food, and I'm not really going to, unless it's really artsy or, it's conceptual or crazy, I might put it on my wall, but not usually going to put that stuff on my wall. Another example from that same spot. And now, the food photos. This is like, so I'm kind of known as a food photographer. A lot of my stock images are food. This is, I think, one of my very first attempts at food photography. It's horrible. It's awful.
No, so let me stop you here for a second, and let me ask you something. What I've noticed about your photographs is, even though your landscape exposure may be, okay, that white water was slightly blurry, but every other photographs that I've seen, you have perfect exposure. Even if you shoot like in 2007, in the earliest photographs that you've shown us.
Oh yeah. I think that I had some things down. I think we all have our strengths, and I think that for me it was, I understood exposure. I still was learning light. I think that it takes us a little while to see light and to actually know how it's forming over your subject. And even in that 2007 era, I think I was still learning that. I didn't notice light like I do now. Like I remember in like probably early 2008 that I remember like driving down the street, and all of a sudden it like just clicked. I could see light. I could see how light was touching things and how it was creating shadows, and that like was revolutionary for my photography. And so once you kind of get to that point, you understand, oh, a strobe light, that's just a light. There's nothing scary about it. It's just a light. A flash is just a light. Reflectors, bounce light, that's just light. So, that's, I think, a really huge step for most photographers. And, it really goes hand in hand with my food photography here, because this is just as horrible. I mean, I was at like 27 millimeter for this kind of photograph. I would never shoot it that wide for this kind of image. And this is another kind of earlier image. Nothing really horrible about it. It's just like little things. Like that fork right there, I would have moved that fork up a little higher to balance better in the scene. Because there's a lot of, like Alex, there's a lot of being very meticulous with where each individual item is in your scene. Anytime you're doing any kind of close-up product type photography. And this is kind of another earlier one. I'm kind of slowly getting better and better. And then here's my more recent stuff. It's my colors. I understand colors really well. Placing things in the scene. I mean, I think I've definitely developed my own style of food photography. There are a lot of other. You see a lot of people doing overhead stuff, which I have one that I'm really fond of. But this is a very typical style, and getting the light backlit, placement of all of my objects, and then here's my one like overhead shot that I have, so that I really like. But yeah, so that's kind of a glimpse of, you know, some of the processes that I've gone through to, I guess, you know, develop my photography to what it is today. And
so did you find that your portrait photography and food photography have anything in common, or you think you needed sort of, other than technical skills, you needed a completely different way of looking at things?
I think that photographers, okay, so photographing people, you know, I have to deal with light and you know, compression and things like that. Going from that to food was now, you know, especially now when I'm doing both, it's really not that much different to me. And it's, I think, because I have a really, especially compared to 5 years ago, I have a really solid understanding of how lenses work and lens compression works and depth of field. And so all of these things that I've learned, those then, you know, like I'm saying, I feel very new to landscape photography. I've really only been doing it for about a year, seriously, you know, like what I would consider seriously, maybe even the last 6 months seriously. And all of the things that I know as a food photographer and a you know, stock portrait photographer, those all carry over to my landscape because I understand how my lens works and how exposure works. And I know I have Photoshop skills, so I understand, oh, okay, well, I don't want to blow out the water here, but I don't want to like underexpose this, so let me go ahead and, you know, take 2 shots and then merge them together and kind of do some masking in that image to get the shot that I actually see in my mind. So I think when you're starting out, there are huge differences between everything, but I think as it grows, it's like, you know, everything kind of starts out really spread far apart, but then as you get, the more you learn about everything, it all kind of just kind of like comes together, and it's all kind of the same thing.
That's an interesting observation that you have, actually, that it's kind of everything is the same thing once you get to a certain point.
I think dealing with your subjects, you know, like I would say, I don't enjoy doing like group portraits or headshots. You know, I could do them. I'm sure I could make the photo look good, but it's, you know, there are things about, like, you know, maybe the subject, like it facing a certain way, like you don't want their nose to break, you know, the plane here. Those little tiny things are when you get into a specific type of photography that you really start to learn. Like, I know food photography really well. I know I still have a long way to go with it just because I want to perfect it, and I have my own vision in my head of how I want it to be. But I know it really well. I know that better than I know doing weddings, you know, or headshots, or, you know, group portraits, things like that. So it's good to specialize, you know, because I think that you will, like, know so much about one thing that you're, like, extremely good at it. But with that said, you're still able to photograph other things, you know, well.
So I have to tell you, I said, looking at all your early work, I have to say I'm kind of embarrassed to show mine because mine is just terrible.
I didn't go all the way back, though.
Well, okay. Well, you are young enough that you went back far enough. Let's just put it that way. Alex and I have had a little more years, I think, than you do. At least I do. So let me tell you something about what my first photography career was. I actually, Alex, like you, tried to buy AE1. Or Jeffrey was trying to say you bought AE1. I tried to buy AE1 when I was in high school.
AE1, what is it?
Canon AE1 was was a camera, auto exposure camera, but it didn't come through. And this was in 1985. And then I came to U.S. You had $100 with you. I had $20. And I was dirt poor for a long time, going to school. And it stayed that way for a long time. And I completely lost interest in photography after that, doing other things. And then until 1995, when I started reading about digital cameras, 94, 95, and I started to research everything I wanted to know about digital cameras. Not quite purchased, but I first purchased my digital camera when my son was born in 1997. And it was one of those point-and-shoot Nikon cameras. I think I paid $900 for it. And didn't shoot any RAW mode. I had a set of filters which I had no clue what to do with. They were ND filters and polarizers. And I had no clue how to use them. And I went and shot with them, and I took those to Yosemite to do some photography work. the people would laugh at me. I mean, they would have all these big fancy cameras, medium formats, and they were all film cameras at the time, and they were like, you should be shooting this. If you really want to learn something, they had all these photography classes that they were offering. I should go and learn photography classes. And I said, yep, you're right. And didn't know what I was doing, so I would just smile and nod my head, and that's about it. And my photos were terrible. And then I decided that, look, the first digital SLR started coming out in early 2000, so I'm going to invest a ton of money to go get a great SLR because I've seen all these guys at Yosemite doing it, so I should be able to do it. And I spent, I think, about $3,500 on a D30 camera. That was my first camera in 2001. And 28 to 135 lens, IS, a tripod, circular polarizer. And I said, I'm going to go shoot. And I heard about RAW, but I didn't know what it did or how it worked. I had no clue. So just like you, Nicole, I went, shot entire vacation in JPEG. Actually, I took some RAW shots and I looked at JPEG and I said, I don't see any difference, and I didn't know what to do with RAW. So let me show you guys some of my really old shots. I'll do the screen share over here. So this was a vacation that I took with my family in, can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Is it,
It's good now.
all right. So I took a vacation in Olympic and I took one of these shots. Now, I could pull something like this out if the lighting was relatively even. But as soon as the lighting got a little more challenging, so let me show you what happens. When the lighting got a little more challenging, I had no clue. If subject matter got really close, I had no clue. I didn't know how to focus. I didn't know anything about lighting. Didn't know anything about white balance whatsoever. And here are a couple of other shots. As long as the lighting is even like that in the daytime, I can get a pretty decent shot. But again, as soon as the lighting got challenging, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just did not know how to get it done. And of course, these are all JPEG images, so there's nothing I can do about it. So these are all the images from, I think, 2001. And this was probably my first vacation. So here I tried to take a shot of sunset, and I ended up sort of getting an exposure which was average, a lot of silhouetted stuff and reflected light, and nothing really good, essentially. And then I tried to take a shot of the forest, which is just awful. Of course, it was in the middle of the day, which I didn't really know what I was doing. And you can see that again, as soon as the lighting got a little bit out of the range of the camera, I didn't know how to handle it. And that was the theme that I had. Now, what happened was that during the same vacation, I went and I took this shot. And this is probably my defining moment of the shot. So I took this shot, and I had actually trained myself to hike and run and do all kinds of places because I wanted to get to these beautiful locations. So I was really fit. So I went on a long hike. I went on the location. I took the shot, and I spent, after probably hiking 8 hours, I spent 3 hours trying to photograph this place. And I just could not photograph it. So I leave this with my expensive gear, and I was convinced that there's no way to photograph it. There are no photographs of this place that exist today because I have the latest gear, and if I can't do it, nobody else could. And then I still had probably about a mile or so to go on my hike. And I go finish my hike, and I go to buy a drink in a gift shop. And right on the front is this perfect photograph of the best location that I photographed. I mean, it is just awesome. The colors, the water, everything is as it should be, right? As I could see with my own eyes. And I said, man, I'm an idiot. I have no clue what I'm doing. And this is probably the start of my photography career. I said, I need to get better at this, or I'm just not making it. So after that, like 2 or 3 years later, I went back to photograph the place. But during the time, I would go to Borders every weekend or Barnes and Nobles or whatever and read every book that they had on photography. I would read every magazine, any published book at that time. The internet didn't have that much information on it. And try to figure out what exactly is it that I'm missing. So one of the first things I figured out was that the range of lighting is very extreme, and I need to know how to learn to deal with it. So the next set of images I'm going to show you is from 2004. So from between 2001 and 2004, I did not invest a single dollar in equipment, not a penny. I still had my D30, and I went to Glacier. Actually, I shouldn't say I didn't invest in equipment. I didn't invest in any camera or lenses. I did, however, invest in 2 pretty important pieces of equipment that I had actually read about in the books, ND filters and GND filters. And this was one of my first attempts to use a GND filter to tame the light. Now, most people will look at the shot and say, wow, this is great. And I remember that my 10-year-old nephew at the time was shooting with a point-and-shoot camera next to me, and I had this expensive DSLR with filters on. And the results he produced were pretty much exactly the same as what I came up with that day. And I even put a filter in front of his camera and say, hey, try this out. And he did, and we both came away with results that looked pretty similar. So I realized that I still did not know how to deal with extreme range of light. However, I had actually gotten a little better at dealing with things that are sort of like a sunset. So I could not deal with light shooting into the sun. But as soon as I shot away from the sun, I could produce the image very nicely. And primarily it was a result of the GND filters. I could actually put a GND filter on, balance the sky out in the foreground, and I could actually get a shot with a pretty decent level of details in most of my images. Not all of them, but most of them. And that took me, like I said, about a year to 2 years. I think this is 2003 here. Let me check the file. 2002. It took me a year to go from shooting just JPEG to shooting the GND filters and trying to figure out how to balance the light. But still, the challenge of shooting into the sun with this extreme range of light eluded me. What else? Other thing that eluded me was creativity. If you look at the shot, I actually knew that the range of light was too much at this point in time. Before, in 2001, when I was shooting Olympic, I didn't know the range of light was too much. In this case, I actually knew the range of light was too much. So what I did was I actually tried to focus in and reduce the range of light by zooming in. And I could do that. I said, yeah, I can create a half-decent shot doing that. But what I really wanted to do was capture this, because it is just so much more breathtaking. The wide vista just gives you so much. It puts you in a place. It puts you into the photograph, while this kind of separates you out because it's a long lens shot. It's out there. So I sort of knew how to deal with this, but not exactly what I wanted. So I would try a different composition to narrow the range of light down. But never was able to capture those wide angles that I wanted. Even when I went back to Olympic in 2004, so this is a series from 2004, I still could not deal with the light the way I wanted it to. But in 2004, I could recognize what was good light and what was bad light and what I should set my exposure to. So in this case, I definitely set the exposure to sky because the colors were just fantastic. However, I was unable to pull out the details from the silhouetted mountains. I could pull the details out of the foreground slightly because I could use a G&D filter, but the mountains still eluded me. But one of the things that I did recognize is how do you let light be controlled in nature where you don't always have control over the light. So I went back in 2004 to the falls that I was trying to photograph in 2001 with JPEG to see if I can actually reproduce that photograph that I had seen. And I was able to pretty successfully do that because I had learned how to control light in the environment, which is outdoors. And I said, oh, this is pretty good, but I still wanted to shoot the sunset that I had seen in Glacier like that. It took me another 3 years before I could actually go and create a photograph looking into the sun. And when I found out that even today in 2012, so this is a photograph from 2007. So between 2004 and 2007, I had actually perfected bracketing, and to a point where I could actually capture extreme range of light, all the way from looking into the sun to everything that I want to do, just like it would look to natural eyes. And this required several skill sets. It's just not required bracketing, but it also required blending exposures of how to make it look natural. And it took me a long time to actually figure this out after several tries. By the time 2007 rolled around, we would actually blend the exposures fairly nicely without much effort into putting into it using Photoshop, which we still do. Similarly, now I can go back to Olympic, which was just a silhouetted beach, and I can actually pull the details out in the places where I wanted to. So the light, by the time 2008 and 2009 rolled around, the light was no longer a challenge for me. So again, here's an exposure of the shot of the falls that I wanted to take where I couldn't take before. So, and the same with forests. I could actually now produce images in the forest with a light that is pretty nicely balanced. I could get the colors that I wanted, produce a range. So now, what I look for is, I look for challenges that go beyond just the obvious dealing with light, which is, I love shooting now creative shots. How do you find minimalistic composition in a place which is as busy as a forest? Or how do you go and take a photograph in midday when there is no good light? So it's that learning to see that last 2 years has been my focus. Technical challenges interest me less. Like you were saying, Alex, that once the challenge is over, you're kind of bored with it. I am kind of bored with technical challenges. But from a photography perspective, I'm more interested in going and putting myself in a really bad location and saying, what can you do with the photograph? So it was interesting, Nicole, you said that your favorite photograph was the Panther Creek Falls that we went, the recent. One of the things that if the light was different, we would never have recommended that location to you guys.
Yeah.
And we recognized that the light and the things were just perfect for that location, and we took you there. If the light was even slightly different, it was not an overcast day, it was some other kind of day, we were taking you to a different location. Right? So that's how my early works just sucks. Let's just put it that way. It's come a little bit further along, but I now enjoy creativity in creating images that you usually don't see. They won't get a lot of 1+s, but I think they're more challenging than the ones that do get 1+s a lot. So any questions on my work?
So are you doing like full HDR on those photos that you were talking about with when you're photographing directly into the sun? Or are you doing like a, like a manual, I guess, HDR with just painting, and masking and stuff with different exposures?
It's always manual.
Okay.
In fact, I can actually show you guys some images. Let me see if I can pull a couple of images of how we do HDR. We always do manual blending for HDR. We almost never do a complete HDR. In fact, we don't own an HDR program, to be honest with you. Give me a second. I need to find out where this is. So what we do is we will take 2 shots. So let me share this. Can you guys see this on the screen?
Yeah, we got to change your screen share because we're just seeing the previous window.
Yeah. So let me show you the screen. All right. So here's an example for a screen share. So let's see. Screen share.
Hey Jay.
Yeah.
Your images are great. I just want to say I sent you on chat that I'll be leaving like in 5 minutes. I'm sorry, just 11:30 here, and I still need to do some stuff.
That's fine. Just go ahead. So, so I think that I'll just wrap this up in a few minutes. So here,
you might want to click on. I think someone mentioned that there's it's on me, like the video. So make sure you click on your icon in the bottom, so it's showing your photos in the Hangout screen.
Oh, hang on. Let me see the Hangout screen.
Yeah, just click on your icon.
Little thumbnails. Yeah, on the thumbnails it should be unselected, or if you select, make sure you select the speaker, whoever is speaking, you or.
Okay, so I'm going to select this. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So so we take 2 shots or more sometimes. So this one is exposed for the foreground, and you can see the sky and everything is blue. And then we will take another shot, which is exposed for the sky. And if I can go and do the next one, that's one that is exposed for the highlight and the sky, right? Now what we will do is we will actually just blend in the first shot. We will go ahead and replace just the sky and the highlights and leave everything else as is. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to preserve local contrast. So the dark shadows between here and the highlights and the reds remain unchanged. What changes is, in this shot, is the sky and the highlights will get replaced. So the way we do the blending is we create a manual mask like this. Mm-hmm. So only the white areas are replaced. You can see all the black areas will be used from one shot, while the white areas will be used from another shot, while the gray areas are where the 2 shots will merge. Okay, and that result is what you see over here. Now, if I do full HDR on this, we have done this on full HDR. It sort of looks a little dull. Let me see if I have one. It looks, no, I don't have it. It looks kind of dull. It looks something similar to this, but I don't have a full HDR on it, where the sky isn't quite dark enough and you lose the vibrancy in the foreground. what we are looking for is we are looking for a shot like that,
Mm-hmm.
where the foreground vibrancy and the foreground local tonality is preserved. And I think we have a presentation, we haven't quite put it up yet anywhere. And we'll talk about it some other time. But that's how we do it nowadays. But I just wanted to wrap this up, Nicole. I want to thank you for coming up here and spending some time. I'll put this video up, and you can share it with your viewers when it comes up, and let's have another one of these.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hopefully Brian will be able to join us.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Nicole.
Sure.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, everyone.